Alan Murphy, Submission Radio, sitting alongside Jimmy Smith, head of Bellator 169 in Dublin, Ireland. Jimmy, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, man.
So you were in Florence last week, Dublin this week, bit of a sunny Italy, wet Ireland. So.
No, it's funny. Italy was cold too. I mean, it's not like it's summer down there, so we had a little bit of rain, we had a little bit of cold, but it doesn't bother me at all, man. It's a great town.
So Bellator has changed quite a bit. Now you're traveling to different countries, so what's it mean for you to be able to come to Europe? Like, you've been to Europe a few times now, to England, Israel, Italy twice, now Ireland. What does that mean for you as a commentator?
You know, one of the things that changes a lot is they're not used to big promotions over here all that much. So the crowds have been crazy. I mean, they've just been passionate and crazy, and the reaction you get from people, it's a bigger deal because MMA kind of grew up in the States. People are a little more used to big shows coming around, and they're not here. And so the crowds and the enthusiasm on the street is really, really something, man.
And so you're a commentator, so you do a lot of research into every card you do. So I'm sure you would have known European fighters before, but now you get to delve into them and get to know them a bit better. What's that mean for you as a sports fan, getting to see all these new fighters that you didn't get to before?
Well, I used to commentate for a promotion called M1, which was big in Europe and big in Russia, and so almost all of our cards were here. So I used to fly to Europe all the time to do fights. So a lot of Daniel Weichel, I called it a lot of his fights early on in M1 and stuff like that. So I got to know a lot of European fighters, and one thing I love about them is the background tends to be a little bit more striking oriented. It's a little bit more, the mix is a little different. In the States, almost always you come from a wrestling background, and so seeing guys come from different backgrounds is really cool. Stylistically, you see things you don't see that often in the States.
I didn't know you worked for M1. How did you get that? How did that gig come about?
Yeah, that was my first commentating gig. And people ask me, how'd you get into commentary? And I was doing a show called Fight Quest for the Discovery Channel, and the president of M1 for the US part called me out of the blue and went, hey, I saw your show. Could you do commentary for us in Amsterdam next week? And I went, yeah, sure, no problem. I can do that. Flew out next Wednesday, did commentary for the first time for a fight in Amsterdam, called 20 fights, and that was it. And they were like, good job, you're hired. And I worked for them for about 3 years. So it was really just out of the blue I got that call.
Who was your commentating partner there? Was it
Sean Wheelock. Sean Wheelock, the same guy I was doing Bellator with. So he was my original commentating partner. He was the only guy I worked with for 7 years or something like that. So yeah, long time, me and Sean, yeah.
So speaking of partnerships, a lot of rumors have been going on lately about Joe Rogan, your friend Joe Rogan, and Mike Goldberg. At first it was Joe that could be going, now it could be Goldie that's going. How do you see that partnership, and do you think it would be detrimental to the UFC if they break that up?
I don't know if it would be detrimental to UFC. It's a tough adjustment as a commentator to go from, there were gaps when we went from Wheelock to Grandy when they made that switch, and you're used to them being done at a certain time, and you know when to start talking, you know when they're finished, you know when to go, and it takes a second to readjust to somebody totally new. When you look at the Goldie Rogan combo, that's been from the beginning, Goldie and Rogan, and people are so used to it that your timing's off, things are a little different. Well, I think it'll be detrimental. One thing you recognize as a commentator is nobody's tuning in to hear Jimmy Smith. I can make the broadcast better, I can do what I can to add to it, but they're there to see fights, they're there to see fighters. So could it be detrimental? That's a harsh word. There will be some changes, and it'll be tough on, whoever goes. The new partner has to adjust, and I had to go through that with Grandy. So that's the part, is the broadcast doesn't sound the same for at least a few episodes, for sure.
So they're saying that Joe Rogan has 1 year left in his contract. Dana says that he can stay as long as he wants because he's so important to the UFC.
Ingrained in the brand. Yeah. Ingrained in the brand. You get used to, I turn on my set for a pay-per-view and it's Goldie and Joe. You just get used to that voice being what you hear when you turn it on. And it's throughout Bronx. I'm from Los Angeles. Chick Hearn was a voice of the Lakers my entire life. Los Angeles Lakers is Chick Hearn. I'm not used to somebody else calling those. Vin Scully for the Dodgers for years. Vin Scully called every Dodgers game, and there's a certain sense of that's the voice I hear when I see this. And when it comes to MMA, it's not like football where there are a bunch of different channels with different teams, and is it on Fox or CBS? It doesn't, it's Big Show, Goldie and Rogan, and it takes a minute for fans to adjust to that. So it's it's a big shock, man. It really is. Yeah.
So when was the last time that you rang Joe or Joe rang you in excitement to talk about something?
Man, the last time was this Fighter Association. You know, it's like, oh man, big changes. Yeah, man, we'll see where it goes. Touching base about, man, what do you think that means? Man, I'm surprised to see the names and all that stuff. So yeah, every time that was the last one I think we shared some messages about. And it's like I said, whenever there's a shift, whenever there's a big shakeup, it's, man, are you doing okay? You know, like, man, this means this, and this, because it's our livelihood too. It's our job too. And you always, you know, keep track of how things are going over there. And that's the communication, man. We do it a lot.
So you spoke there about the Fighters Association. What are your thoughts on it, and specifically Bjorn's involvement?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I have a long history with Bjorn. Everybody knows about working for him, and I don't know. Also, specifically, what, you know, where it's going to go and what it's going to do. If you listen to the conference call, which I wasn't on, but obviously I've read the transcripts and everything, and I've talked to a lot of people who are on it. It's okay. What does this mean? Okay. Oh, we're not a union. We're an association. Well, in the United States, if you're not a union, they don't have to listen to you. If you're not recognized by the labor board, they don't have to deal with you legally. So it's an association. What does that mean? What is that? Until you get down to dollars and cents and obviously paperwork and lawsuits and things like that, it's all kind of up in the air. You don't know. And that's when I say I check in, yeah, where's all this going to land? You don't know. And it's like anytime in this business, people go, you know, are you guys going to sign this fighter? Is this fighter going to move? And until they sign on the dotted line, it's all speculation. You don't know. And the Fighters Association is very much that kind of thing, where it's all kind of up in the air. So what are you guys going to do exactly? And there's not a lot concrete coming out of it yet. Bjorn's involvement, I haven't spoken to Bjorn since he left Bellator. I don't know. So his involvement, obviously he knows the business, he knows the game. So, and also he's kind of an advisor. Oh, I'm just consulting. Well, you know, as everybody says, you know, what does that mean? I don't know any more than anybody else. So yeah, I'm waiting to see what happens and see if anything you know, of substance comes out of it.
So just moving on to some recent Bellator signings. You as a commentator, it must be exciting to be calling a Fedor fight.
Yeah, that's fun. You know, it's one of those things where Matt Mitrione and Fedor have become, in the last few years. Matt Mitrione's his last fight, the last two he had in Bellator, you know, against Ollie Thompson, against Carl Seymour-Montafo, he ate some punches. He ate some shots. Same thing, you know, Fedor against Maldonado, man, he was getting hit in ways he hadn't been hit in years. And it could be one of those things where they're at the right point to meet each other. Where, yeah, you know, you can talk about when Fedor's not what he used to be, Matt Mitrione. They're hittable, and it's going to be exciting, and they can both knock guys out, and they can both get hit, and they're both big, even for heavyweights. So it's one of those things where I think it'll make a very, very, very exciting fight stylistically, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
You're obviously a fan of the sport.
Yeah.
Big fan of Pride back in the day.
Oh yeah, huge fan of Pride. I loved it. Loved it.
So there's kind of like a resurgence now of Pride, with Wanderlei coming over. There's a few fights there that could be made, that could be like are straight out of Pride, that could be in Bellator now. Is there any fights that you'd match for Wanderlei or any of the old Pride vets?
You know what's funny? A big one that's getting mentioned a lot that can't not be exciting is Wanderlei and Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen believes he has unfinished business with Wanderlei, and Wanderlei, you know, Chael Sonnen loves getting under guys' skins. Wanderlei Silva, you get under his skin, he'll make you pay. I mean, he's the axe murderer for a reason, and you know, he takes everything. It isn't just, oh, we're here to hype a fight. He's going to make you suffer for saying the things he said. And so that's one that I think two guys in the organization, if they sign Wanderlei Silva to an actual fight contract, and it's hard to keep those two guys away from one another. And I think that's going to be an incredibly exciting fight.
Any other fights for Wanderlei?
I'm sorry?
Any other fights for Wanderlei? I was talking to him yesterday, and he said he has a list of people he wants to fight. He's like Fedor, Rampage, Mirko Krokop. He wants to fight in the future, whether it's in Bellator or Ryzen. Chael Sonnen's actually amongst them. But amongst them, would Chael be the fight that you'd like to see? Or
Wanderlei, I would say of those, I think Wanderlei Chael, because there are directions you can put either guy. Number one, it's not, you know, Mirko Krokop's a heavyweight, big heavyweight. Fedor is a big heavyweight. Wanderlei would have to fight a perfect fight to beat those guys, simply because, you know, if you look at the first fight with Krokop, man, Krokop landed strikes on him that would drop a rhino. And it's one of those things where, is that good for Wanderlei to fight guys that are naturally a lot bigger, guys that naturally hit a lot harder than he does? Chael is one of those where the winner, we have directions for those guys, where there's a natural, what do you do with the winner, what do you do with the loser? You always have to think about that as a promotion. One guy's going to win and one guy's going to lose. What's the direction for those guys? For both of those guys, there are a lot of different directions you can go, a lot of entertaining fights that can be made, and I don't think either guy beats the career out of the other. In terms of, I think the loser, depending on how it goes, both guys are tough, is still salvageable. There's still some good fights left for him. If you take on a Fedor or a Krokop and he hits you with a good one, that can take years off your career, and I don't want to see that happen.
So, recently, Scott Coker's put together some like super fights, putting legends against legends, being met with mixed criticism. Me personally, I like them, but I can understand why some people wouldn't.
Completely.
What is your take on them? I know you, regardless, you have to be calling the fighters in front of you, and you have a job to do.
Yeah.
But like, do you like seeing these fights personally, or would you rather not?
Well, it depends on the fight. I mean, it really does. When we had, for example, Stephan Bonner, Tito, we had these fights where, as long as they're evenly matched, where the hardest part for me personally as a commentator is when I don't have a fight that I feel is evenly matched. It's hard for me to go, does this guy really have a shot? Stephan Bonner, Tito Ortiz, they're both past their primes, but they're both there. And so you're going to get a competitive fight with these two guys. That's the thing. Chael Sonnen, Tito Ortiz, 39 and 40, you could say anything you want about where they are in their careers, but they're at about the same place. And so you're going to get a competitive match out of that. And as long as you do that, if it's legend versus legend, I'm happy. If it's, a newcomer versus newcomer, up-and-comer versus veteran, something I can see a balance in there. I don't mind that at all. So a lot of people, Chael Tito to a lot of people is one of those legends fights, but people see a competitive fight there, and that's what I thrive on.
Yeah, I agree with that. So speaking of legend fights, do you see Royce Gracie fighting in Bellator again?
That is an interesting question. That's an interesting question because in his last fight against Ken, regardless of how you feel about the outcome, obviously extremely controversial. He didn't get hit. He didn't get any damage. He didn't have any injuries. It was his kind of fight in terms of the amount of damage taken. And so I think you could see him again, especially if he's matched up well. Because that would be the issue is it would have to be kind of a legends fight. It would have to be one of those guys that I just talked about that was competitive with Royce in terms of where they are in their career. At Royce's age, there aren't many of those guys. That's the problem. Ken was one of those guys, but I mean, it's hard to think of a lot more.
I believe Pat Miletich put his hand up.
Yeah, Pat Miletich. Yeah, I'd love to see that. You know what I mean? That's one of those things where you'd have to find a guy like that, and if you could find that matches up well, I think we could see him again.
Yeah, excellent. And when are you going to be back on the Joe Rogan Experience?
I get asked that all the time, and I say the same thing. I go, so when am I coming over to your house for dinner? Whenever I get invited, it's Joe's podcast. It's not like we all write our names down on a list and we get there. It's, the last one I did a fight companion with him and Uncle Creepy, Ian McCall. We were on for 5 hours. I think 5.5 hours, something like that. Because we did the fights and then we just ended up talking and we stayed there for forever and it was rolling the whole time. He called me like that afternoon. Hey dude, we're having a fight companion, man. It's me and Ian. You want to come by? Yeah, sure, I got nothing going on. Yeah, I'll do it. And we showed up and called the fights and then hung out. It wasn't planning. It wasn't like, next week Jimmy's going to be on. He literally called me. I'm at home and he goes, hey man, you come on by the Valley right now? Yeah, sure, dude. No problem. Yeah, I'll be there in be there in an hour. Okay, cool. Let's start for an hour and a half, right? That's it. So I don't know when I'm going to be on Joe's podcast. He literally called me in the afternoon for the last one. So whenever he calls me, I come down, and it's pretty close for me. We're both in LA. So, yeah, it's one of those things where as soon as I'm invited, I'll be back. But who knows? Who knows when I'll get the call.
All right, thanks, Jimmy. Thanks very much.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.